Have you ever wondered about the precise fraction of a second that alters the trajectory of an entire lifetime? Is it a word spoken in the quietest of rooms, or is it the thunderous roar of an engine tearing through the fabric of the sky? We often navigate through our years like blind sparrows, drifting aimlessly in the wind until an unexpected encounter gives us a compass. Sometimes, salvation does not come from a grand miracle, but from a simple, quiet gesture of a friend, a gentle hand that guides us out of the darkness and teaches us how to touch the clouds. Welcome to Fluttering Moments. The morning sky over Fredericksburg, Virginia, was an endless canvas of crystalline blue. Inside the cockpit of a meticulously restored North American Aviation P-51 Mustang, Oliver found himself suspended more than 15,000 feet above the earth. The world below seemed like a fragile miniature, completely detached from the roaring heart of the V12 Merlin engine vibrating through the metal frame. The city slipped away beneath his left wing, leaving only the sprawling landscape stretching toward the town of Culpeper. Oliver's hands moved with practiced precision, pushing the control stick forward. The silver nose of the legendary World War II fighter dipped aggressively into a steep dive. Gravity claimed the aircraft as the needle on the airspeed indicator trembled, effortlessly crossing the 600 km/h mark. The rushing wind screamed violently against the canopy. Descending far too low, he leveled out dangerously close to the terrain, aligning the roaring machine directly over an empty stretch of road. His heart hammered against his ribs in a steady rhythm as he silently counted to 3. With a deliberate motion, Oliver executed a flawless barrel roll. It was a maneuver of pure, unadulterated freedom, perhaps the most beautiful roll he had ever performed. As the horizon spun and settled back into place, a profound peace washed over him. He knew perfectly well that he was flagrantly violating multiple federal aviation regulations. Low-altitude flights over unauthorized zones and advanced aerobatics below the mandated safety threshold were grave offenses. This was especially true for Oliver, a respected official of the Combat Pilots Association and a strictly disciplined flight instructor. Yet, in that fleeting moment, he felt not a single ounce of regret. Whether right or wrong, that brief, rebellious flight belonged entirely to him, a necessary catharsis for a soul once trapped in the deepest abysses of despair. The sheer freedom of the skies was a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness that defined the early chapters of Oliver's existence. Long before he ever understood the mechanics of flight, his world had been bound by the heavy chains of trauma. It began when he was just 6 years old. His parents' marriage dissolved in a bitter silence, ending with his biological father walking away and leaving the family stranded in the unforgiving labyrinth of New York City. The year was 1943. While the outside world was engulfed in the flames of the Second World War, a different, more intimate war raged inside Oliver's small apartment. His mother, worn thin by the relentless demands of a wartime economy, worked exhausting shifts at a local munitions factory. Desperate for stability, she soon married a man named Richard. However, the sanctuary she hoped to build quickly transformed into a prison of terror. Richard was a man consumed by a volatile rage, a walking storm cloud whose very presence sucked the warmth from the room. Life under his rule was a harrowing ordeal, punctuated by terrifying midnight shouting matches and the sickening, muffled sounds of physical abuse. Oliver spent countless nights lying awake, his small body trembling as he listened to his mother's agonizing cries echoing down the narrow hallway. The true descent into darkness occurred on one seemingly ordinary evening. Richard had gruffly announced that he and Oliver's mother were going out, issuing a cold, strict command for the boy to stay in bed and turn off the lights. But the restless anxiety of a traumatized child made obedience impossible. Driven by a desperate need to understand his chaotic world, Oliver possessed a quiet habit of sneaking out of bed to peer through the window. He was cautiously creeping across the floorboards when the room was suddenly flooded with a harsh, blinding yellow light. Richard stood towering in the doorway, his eyes burning with a sadistic fury, gripping a heavy leather belt and a coiled clothesline. The air grew instantly cold. Richard hurled vicious curses, condemning the boy for his disobedience. What followed was a nightmare etched permanently into Oliver's psyche. He was violently thrown onto the mattress. With ruthless force, Richard bound Oliver's fragile wrists and ankles tightly to the iron bed frame, rendering him completely defenseless. In the suffocating grip of that shadowed room, the boy endured a horrific, merciless beating, his cries muffled by overwhelming fear, until the deepest wounds mirrored the absolute devastation of his young soul. For 2 agonizing years, Oliver existed merely as a ghost in his own life, trapped in an unending cycle of severe abuse. The radiant light of childhood had been entirely extinguished, replaced by a hollow, defensive numbness. Deliverance finally arrived on a stormy night, brought forth through the fierce, uncompromising determination of his grandmother, Eleanor. Traveling all the way from Wilmington, Delaware, she took one agonizing look at the shattered state of her grandson and unleashed a furious argument with Oliver's mother. That very night, Eleanor marched him out of that cursed apartment, placing him securely into a waiting car. As the taillights faded into the heavy rain, Oliver peered out the rear window, completely unaware that it would be the last time he would ever see his mother. Fast forward 8 years, and the traumatized child had grown into a deeply troubled teenager living in Wilmington. Eleanor was a fundamentally good woman, providing a safe roof and steady meals, but she was profoundly strict and emotionally reserved. She was a woman of tangible actions, and the word love never once graced her lips in conversation. Meanwhile, Oliver's biological father had remarried and settled in Texas, becoming a phantom who occasionally visited with vague, obligatory gifts. As a high-ranking manager at a large corporate firm, Eleanor's days were entirely consumed by her career. Oliver's interactions with her were reduced to brief, functional moments, a quick glance before the morning school bell, and a silent dinner when she returned exhausted at 6 in the evening. Left to navigate the turbulent waters of adolescence completely alone, the unhealed wounds of Oliver's past festered into a burning, uncontrollable anger. School quickly became his battlefield. He was perpetually aggressive, lashing out at peers and teachers alike, carrying a deep-seated hostility that manifested in constant, violent brawls. By the time he turned 15, the public school system had completely given up on him, officially expelling the angry, lost boy. In a desperate final attempt to salvage his future, Eleanor enrolled him in a rigorous military academy in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. The institution was infamous for its draconian methods, specifically designed to hammer rebellious youth into strict conformity. It was Oliver's first genuine encounter with organized discipline. Yet, the military precision could not penetrate the thick armor of a heart that had learned to survive purely through defiance. The rigid environment only fueled his rebellious fire, making submission to authority impossible. Inevitably, the absolute failure to conform led to his swift expulsion at the age of 16, leaving him once again adrift, a solitary, angry soul desperately waiting for a guiding light he didn't even know existed. Returning to the mundane reality of a Wilmington public school, Oliver's weekends stretched before him like desolate wastelands. The year was colored by the vibrant optimism of a post-war America, a nation celebrating its triumph and marching eagerly into a prosperous future. Yet, Oliver felt completely detached from this collective joy, navigating his days as an unwanted ghost haunting his own life. The suffocating silence of his grandmother's house offered no solace, driving him out into the sprawling, indifferent streets. One particularly aimless Saturday, possessed by a restless spirit and a desperate need to escape the crushing gravity of his own anger, he boarded a city bus bound for the outermost fringes of the city. He disembarked near the Newcastle airbase, a sprawling complex that hummed with the mechanical pulse of the Delaware Air National Guard. Wandering off the paved roads, he slipped into the dense woods hugging the hillside. The crisp afternoon air carried a strange, intoxicating blend of crushed pine needles, damp earth, and the sharp, metallic tang of high-octane aviation fuel. It was an atmosphere thick with unspoken history. As he pushed through the final veil of trees, the landscape opened up to reveal a gleaming expanse of tarmac, and there, resting with the quiet dignity of a dormant titan, sat a masterpiece of engineering. It was a P-51 Mustang. For the very first time in his turbulent life, Oliver stood face to face with a genuine fighter plane. He was instantly, hopelessly mesmerized. The aircraft was a breathtaking marvel, its polished silver fuselage reflecting the pale sunlight, bearing the silent scars and unspoken stories of the Second World War. To a fractured boy, trapped in an endless cycle of powerlessness, the Mustang was the ultimate symbol of absolute freedom and untamed strength. Completely forgetting his surroundings, Oliver stepped out of the tree line and approached the magnificent beast. He walked in a slow, reverent circle, his fingertips tentatively brushing against the cold, unyielding metal of its broad wings. He marveled at the massive, lethal blades of the propeller. Intoxicated by a sudden, overwhelming urge, he impulsively hoisted himself up, scrambling onto the wing, and daringly slid his slender frame down into the leather seat of the cockpit, surrounded by a dizzying array of dials and flight instruments. The momentary illusion of being an untouchable king of the sky was shattered with violent suddenness. A harsh, booming voice shattered the quiet afternoon. A man wearing a blue uniform, adorned with the 3 stark stripes of a military insignia, suddenly appeared below, his face twisted in stern disapproval as he barked an order for the trespassing kid to get out immediately. A surge of pure, primal panic flooded Oliver's veins. His survival instincts, honed by years of navigating his stepfather's wrath, kicked in instantly. He scrambled frantically to escape, fully intending to leap off the wing and disappear back into the safety of the woods. But before his feet could even leave the metal surface, a firm, heavy hand suddenly clamped down on his trembling shoulder. Instead of yanking him downward to face punishment, the hand surprisingly pushed him gently back into the pilot's seat. Trembling, Oliver slowly turned his head, bracing himself for a brutal scolding or worse. Instead, he found himself staring directly into the eyes of a man wearing a rugged flight suit. Standing there on the wing of the Mustang, bathed in the soft afternoon light, was a pilot with striking reddish-brown hair. And to Oliver's utter astonishment, the man's eyes held no anger whatsoever. They were crinkled at the edges, offering a warm, reassuring smile that seemed to instantly disarm the boy's fiercely guarded heart. This man was Captain Thomas. In that single, unexpected moment of grace, the trajectory of Oliver's life shifted forever. On that very first day, before the frightened teenager even left the military base, he found himself addressing the seasoned aviator by his familiar first name, a rare gesture of immediate trust. Captain Thomas was not just a pilot. He was a hardened veteran who had expertly flown deadly combat missions across the perilous, sun-drenched skies of the Pacific Theater. After the war, Thomas returned home, dedicating his sharp mind to academic pursuits. He successfully graduated from university with a degree in electrical engineering and secured a respectable position at an engineering firm in Georgetown, Delaware. Yet, his soul remained intrinsically tied to the heavens, drawing him back to the airfield on weekends. As weeks gently bled into one another, Oliver's aimless wandering was replaced by a singular, burning purpose, returning to the base to see his newfound mentor. Slowly, cautiously, the defensive walls surrounding Oliver's shattered heart began to crumble. Sitting in the quiet presence of the older man, the boy finally found the courage to speak. He poured out the harrowing secrets of his miserable existence, the terrifying nights of his childhood, and the deep, consuming anger that made him fight the world. In return, Captain Thomas offered no judgment and no harsh discipline. He offered only profound, unwavering empathy and genuine warmth. For the very first time in his brief, agonizing life, Oliver had discovered a true friend. It was the exact moment his dark, chaotic world began a beautiful transformation toward the light. The tarmac transformed from a cold slab of concrete into a sacred sanctuary. Captain Thomas and Oliver spent countless golden afternoons simply sitting together beneath the expansive, protective shade of the Mustang's silver wing. In that tranquil space, Thomas became a brilliant, patient teacher who recognized the untamed intelligence hidden beneath Oliver's aggressive exterior. Their conversations soared far beyond the mechanics of flight. They discussed the elegant poetry of mathematics, the complex forces of physics, and the dramatic arcs of human history. The knowledge that had once felt so impossibly dull in a rigid classroom suddenly crackled with vibrant life when shared by a man who had navigated by the stars. Those hours were nothing short of miraculous. The gentle cadence of Thomas's voice possessed a remarkable therapeutic quality, slowly stitching together the torn fragments of Oliver's self-worth. But perhaps the most profoundly healing gift Captain Thomas bestowed upon the broken teenager was an introduction to his world. Thomas proudly introduced Oliver to the other pilots and mechanics who inhabited the base. To them, Oliver wasn't a delinquent or a failure. He was simply Thomas's boy. They welcomed him into their rugged, laughter-filled circle, sharing their grease-stained stories. For the very first time, Oliver truly understood the profound weight of belonging. He felt the protective embrace of being part of a team, proving to a lost child that the world was not just a battlefield, but a vast, open sky waiting to be explored. Despite the profound solace Oliver found beneath the silver wings of the Mustang, the rigid walls of his academic life remained an impenetrable fortress of frustration. The public school system in Wilmington, with its inflexible curriculum and unsympathetic educators, continued to feel like a suffocating cage for a mind that had only just begun to appreciate the vastness of the sky. Oliver's grades reflected his deep-seated apathy. They were dismal, a chaotic array of failing marks that seemed to confirm the world's lowest expectations of him. One particularly heavy afternoon, heavily burdened by a fresh string of academic failures and a looming sense of utter defeat, Oliver sought out Captain Thomas. They sat in their usual sanctuary, the concrete cooling as the late sun cast long, golden shadows across the tarmac. With a heavy, defeated sigh, Oliver confessed to his mentor that he wanted to quit school entirely, abandon the suffocating classrooms, and simply find a menial job to scrape by. He expected Thomas to offer a gentle reprimand, or perhaps a strategic plan to improve his study habits. Instead, a heavy, contemplative silence fell between them. When Thomas finally spoke, his demeanor had shifted dramatically. Gone was the easygoing laughter of the weekend aviator. In its place was the profound, piercing seriousness of a combat veteran who intimately understood the devastating cost of a wasted life. Thomas leaned in close, his eyes reflecting the fading sunlight, and spoke words that would permanently alter the architecture of Oliver's soul. "You know, kid," Thomas began, his voice possessing an unfamiliar gravelly weight, "you make me think of a blind sparrow." He paused, allowing the strange metaphor to hang in the quiet air between them. That sparrow. It knows inherently how to fly. Its wings are perfectly formed, its muscles are strong, and its instincts scream at it to take to the air. But it cannot fly, simply because it is blind. Even if it manages to launch itself off the ground, it will only crash into something, terrified and broken. It wanders through its entire existence, accomplishing absolutely nothing of value, entirely because it lacks direction. Thomas reached out, placing a firm, grounding hand on Oliver's shoulder, a gesture that mirrored their very first encounter. "You are incredibly bright. You have all the necessary elements inside you, all the raw materials required to soar. But, for God's sake, you have to use them. No matter what you choose to do in this life, You still desperately need a direction. You need to know where you are flying. I want you to go home and think about that." The words struck Oliver with the force of a physical blow. The profound truth of the blind sparrow resonated deep within his fractured identity, forcing him to confront the terrifying reality of his own aimless existence. Despite the profound awakening sparked by Thomas's philosophical wisdom, the immediate reality of Oliver's academic struggles did not miraculously vanish. He continued to find himself entangled in minor troubles at school, and his academic record remained frustratingly poor. Eventually, Eleanor, his stern grandmother, reached the limits of her patience and resources. In a decisive move intended to sever him from his troubled environment, she arranged for Oliver to move across the country to California to live with his Aunt Margaret. Oliver recounted this drastic development to Thomas, hoping for a miracle that would allow him to stay. A few days later, Thomas visited Eleanor, engaging her in a closed-door conversation that lasted for hours. The young boy waited with bated breath, but ultimately, the seasoned pilot's eloquent pleas could not alter the ironclad decision of the determined matriarch. And so, in the waning days of August 1953, Oliver boarded a commercial airliner bound for Los Angeles, leaving behind the only true sanctuary he had ever known. Aunt Margaret proved to be a beacon of unexpected warmth. She was a deeply kind woman who consistently went out of her way to support him, offering the maternal affection he had been violently denied in his early childhood. Yet, a profound homesickness anchored his heart to the East Coast. He missed the smell of the Newcastle tarmac, the roar of the engines, and, most of all, he missed the quiet wisdom of Captain Thomas. He desperately tried to adapt to the sun-drenched, vibrant culture of California, but it was the steady stream of letters from Thomas that truly sustained him. Those handwritten pages, filled with updates about the airfield, tales of aviation, and gentle reminders of his own potential, acted as a vital lifeline, making Oliver's new life significantly brighter and infinitely more hopeful. This fragile peace, however, was destined to be shattered by an unfathomable tragedy. It was late on a quiet evening in March of 1955. The shrill, piercing ring of the telephone abruptly cut through the silent house, a sound that immediately sent an inexplicable chill down Oliver's spine. He watched from the hallway as Aunt Margaret answered the call. As she listened, the color rapidly drained from her face, her eyes welling with sudden, devastating sorrow. Just by observing her shattered expression, Oliver intuitively knew that an unspeakable catastrophe had occurred. When she finally hung up the receiver, she turned to him with trembling lips and delivered the agonizing news. Captain Thomas was dead. He had been on a routine mission, navigating his aircraft back toward the familiar runways of Newcastle. Suddenly, amidst the seemingly peaceful sky, the plane suffered a catastrophic mechanical failure, plunging into a terrifying, uncontrollable dive. In those final, agonizing seconds, Thomas faced the ultimate, harrowing choice. He could have ejected, deployed his parachute, and saved his own life. But directly beneath his failing aircraft lay a densely populated residential neighborhood. With the same unwavering heroism and boundless compassion he had shown to a broken, angry teenager on a tarmac years ago, Thomas made his final, defining decision. He chose to stay in the doomed cockpit, using every last ounce of his immense strength and skill to aggressively wrestle the violently plummeting machine away from the homes below, holding the control stick steady until it was far too late for him to escape. A suffocating, unfamiliar agony surged through Oliver's chest, a sensation of profound loss he had never before experienced. It was as if the very air had been vacuumed from the room. He desperately tried to suppress the rising tide of tears, clenching his fists until his knuckles turned white. But the dam eventually broke. Everything inside him felt violently shattered, reduced to a chaotic, agonizing mess of grief. For days he existed in a paralyzing haze, the world entirely devoid of color or meaning. but gradually, the tears ceased falling. In the agonizing stillness of his morning, his thoughts drifted back to the silver Mustang, to the warm afternoons, and invariably, to the haunting parable of the blind sparrow. Thomas's deep, resonant voice echoed repeatedly in his mind, reminding him of his untethered existence. It was in the crucible of this immense tragedy that the pilot's final lesson fully crystallized within Oliver's soul. He finally recognized the absolute, undeniable truth of those words. Up until that tragic night, despite the change in scenery, he had still been drifting without a true bearing, a sparrow with strong wings but no destination in a chaotic, turbulent world. Exhausted by grief, he eventually fell into a deep, heavy slumber. When he awoke the following morning, his sheets were damp with sweat, but his mind possessed a strange, beautiful clarity. The oppressive fog had magically lifted. In a sudden, blinding flash of profound realization, he knew exactly what had shifted inside his core. He finally saw the horizon. He knew exactly what direction his life needed to take, and he knew, with unwavering, ironclad certainty, exactly what he had to do to make it happen, not just for himself, but to honor the extraordinary man who had given him the sky. That very year, driven by a newfound, unshakable resolve that had been forged in the fierce fires of his grief, Oliver marched into a local recruitment office and officially enlisted in the United States Air Force. The angry, defiant teenager, who had once been expelled from multiple schools, was completely gone, replaced by a young man operating with a laser-focused, quiet intensity. He initially trained as an air traffic controller, spending grueling hours in dimly lit radar rooms, meticulously orchestrating the complex, high-speed ballet of metal birds in the sky. Yet, his heart always belonged in the cockpit. During his off-duty hours, he immersed himself in demanding studies, devouring complex manuals on aerodynamics, meteorology, and celestial navigation with an insatiable hunger. His relentless dedication and impeccable service record eventually earned him a coveted spot in pilot training. When he finally took the controls of a training aircraft, it became immediately apparent that Captain Thomas had been right all along. Oliver possessed a rare, innate genius for flight. He didn't just fly the aircraft, he wore them, sensing their physical limits and aerodynamic nuances through the very seat of his pants. He quickly discovered a profound talent for aerobatics, executing complex, high-G maneuvers with a fluid, breathtaking grace that left seasoned instructors in awe. Over the following years, he transitioned from an eager student to a highly respected flight instructor himself, spending his weekends patiently teaching the next generation of aviators how to conquer the skies. By the year 1971, Oliver had amassed thousands of flight hours, performing in over 100 demanding air shows and lecturing to senior flight instructors across the entire nation. During that incredible era of rapid technological advancement, he piloted everything from cutting-edge experimental aircraft, pushing the very boundaries of the sound barrier, to the heavy, powerful military jets, defending the airspace during the tense height of the Cold War. Despite his highly impressive resume and his mastery of the thunderous roar of modern jet engines, a quiet, unresolved promise still lingered deep within his soul. It was the colorful, crisp autumn of 1971 when a truly unique opportunity presented itself. A wealthy physician based in New York had formally contracted Oliver to ferry a freshly restored, absolutely pristine P-51 Mustang from Newark, New Jersey, down to a buyer in Manassas, Virginia. It was the exact same legendary model of aircraft that had served as the ultimate catalyst for his entire life's journey. Oliver meticulously planned the route late into the night. With a full load of 180 gallons of high-octane reserve fuel sloshing in the wing tanks, his precise mathematical calculations confirmed that he had a very comfortable 30-minute margin of extra flight time before he absolutely needed to touch down at his final destination. On the frosty, brilliantly clear morning of November 21st, exactly at 7:30, Oliver climbed the aluminum boarding ladder of the Mustang parked on the busy Newark tarmac. As he slid into the familiar, worn leather seat and the heavy glass canopy sealed shut, the distinct, intoxicating smell of aviation oil and warm metal immediately transported him back to a golden afternoon in Delaware. The mighty V12 engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life, violently shaking the airframe with a raw, visceral power. He took off smoothly, banking toward the south, soaring high above the jagged coastline of Cape May, New Jersey. He guided the beautiful silver warbird toward Cambridge, Maryland, tracing the invisible, silent highways of the sky. But as he reached the designated airspace above Cambridge, instead of continuing on the direct, federally approved course to Manassas, Oliver gently but deliberately pushed the control stick to the right, banking the heavy fighter westward, deliberately altering his trajectory toward the quiet, unsuspecting town of Culpeper. This highly unauthorized diversion brought him directly to the breathtaking moment where our story first began: the dangerous, high-speed dive and the spectacular barrel roll over the Virginia countryside. The precise location where Oliver flagrantly violated strict federal aviation regulations on that beautiful morning was not just a random patch of rural earth. It was the serene, hallowed grounds of the Mount Carmel Baptist Church Cemetery. Resting peacefully beneath the manicured green grass and weathered marble headstones was the grave of Captain Thomas. It had taken Oliver 16 long, arduous years of relentless effort, countless hours of grueling study, and a complete, agonizing transformation of his character to finally find the perfect opportunity to pay his respects. He had to return not as a broken, angry boy seeking shelter, but as an undisputed master of the sky, a man truly worthy of the immense, tragic sacrifice his friend had made, and he had meticulously orchestrated it so he could perform this ultimate tribute in the exact same type of legendary aircraft they had sat upon during their very first, fateful encounter at the Newcastle base. As the Mustang tore through the sky, its engine roaring just above the quiet tree line, Oliver gently tipped the massive silver wings in a crisp, sharp military salute, the engine's thunder serving as a magnificent, tear-jerking eulogy echoing across the valley. In the sacred solitude of the cockpit, surrounded by the deafening mechanical noise and the rushing wind, hot tears of pure joy, profound relief, and eternal gratitude streamed freely down Oliver's face. He was finally saying a proper, honorable goodbye to the extraordinary pilot who had bravely reached into the darkness and pulled him into the eternal light. Years later, Oliver's loving wife would often affectionately tease him about his highly dramatic, rule-breaking flight to a quiet country graveyard. But beneath her light-hearted jokes, she understood completely the profound, sacred magnitude of that single, defining moment in time. That magnificent, rebellious flight was the beautiful culmination of a journey that awakened two invaluable, timeless lessons within his soul. First, it stands as a permanent, shining testament to the fact that one single human being possesses the miraculous, undeniable power to completely alter the trajectory of another person's life. Captain Thomas was the living, breathing proof of that extraordinary phenomenon. Second, it profoundly proves that we are capable of achieving absolutely anything, overcoming the darkest of childhood pasts and the most insurmountable of societal odds, provided we possess relentless hard work, unyielding patience, and the small, gentle, life-saving help of a friend. We all experience fluttering moments in our lives, those quiet, seemingly insignificant interactions that hold the sheer, terrifying power to change our ultimate destiny. The fundamental question is, are our hearts open enough to feel that delicate vibration, to accept the outstretched hand of guidance, and to finally find the courage to take flight? If you have ever been fortunate enough to have a Captain Thomas in your own life, someone who saw the vast, beautiful sky in you when you only saw the muddy ground, I warmly invite you to share your unique story in the comments section below. Let us know how a simple, quiet act of human compassion gave you your wings. Thank you for listening, and may you always find your true direction in the boundless sky.